The Fresno sun beat down on my neck as I unloaded the last case of wine from my truck. Sweat trickled down my back, making my silk blouse cling uncomfortably. But I, Lindsay Morgan, 35-year-old winemaker extraordinaire, wasn't about to let a little perspiration dampen my spirits. This wine festival could make or break my small vineyard's reputation. I smoothed down my skirt, acutely aware of the appreciative glances thrown my way. My curvy figure and long auburn hair always drew attention, but today, I needed to focus on the wine, not the wandering eyes of festival goers. "Need a hand with that?" A husky voice sent shivers down my spine. I turned to find myself face to face with the most striking woman I'd ever seen. Short blonde hair framed a face that could launch 1,000 ships, and those eyes, dear God, those eyes were an ocean I could drown in. "I'm Michaela," she said, extending a perfectly manicured hand. "The festival's head sommelier." Our fingers brushed as we shook hands, and I swear I felt a jolt of electricity. "Lindsay," I managed to stammer out. "Lindsay Morgan. I'm the winemaker for Sunset Ridge Vineyard." Michaela's eyes lit up. "Oh, I've been looking forward to trying your Cabernet. I've heard whispers about it in wine circles." Pride swelled in my chest. "Well then," I said, reaching for a bottle, "let's not keep you waiting." As I poured, I couldn't help but notice how Michaela's gaze lingered on my hands, my wrists, my neck. She took the glass, her fingers ghosting over mine in a way that seemed far too deliberate to be accidental. She closed her eyes as she sipped, and I found myself mesmerized by the curve of her throat as she swallowed. When she opened her eyes, the look she gave me was nothing short of smoldering. "Exquisite," she murmured, and I wasn't entirely sure if she was talking about the wine or something else. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of pores and small talk, but I kept finding my eyes drawn back to Michaela. She moved through the crowd with grace and authority, her laugh carrying over the din of the festival. More than once, I caught her looking my way, a small smile playing on her lips. As the festival wound down, Michaela made her way back to my booth. "I have to say, Lindsay," she said, leaning in close, "your wines were the highlight of my evening." "High praise from the head sommelier," I replied, trying to ignore the way my heart raced at her proximity. "I'd love to discuss them further sometime," Michaela said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. She pressed a business card into my hand, her touch lingering far longer than necessary. "Call me." With a wink and a smile that promised things I barely dared to imagine, she was gone, disappearing into the thinning crowd. I stood there, clutching her card, my mind reeling. In just a few hours, this woman had upended my world. As I packed up my remaining bottles, I couldn't shake the feeling that something extraordinary had just begun. That night, in my hotel room, I lay awake, replaying every moment of our encounter. The way Michaela's eyes had roamed over me, the timbre of her laugh, the electricity in her touch. I hadn't felt this way about anyone in years, let alone another woman. As I drifted off to sleep, my dreams were filled with blonde hair, blue eyes, and the intoxicating possibility of what might come next. Weeks passed, and I couldn't get Michaela out of my head. Her business card sat on my desk, a tempting reminder of that electric night in Fresno. I'd picked up my phone a dozen times to call her, but always chickened out at the last second. What if I'd misread the signals? What if? My spiraling thoughts were interrupted by the crunch of tires on gravel. I peered out the window of my office, nestled in the heart of Sunset Ridge Vineyard, and my heart nearly stopped. There, stepping out of a sleek convertible, was Michaela. She looked even more stunning than I remembered, dressed in a flowing sundress that hugged her curves in all the right places. I scrambled to smooth down my hair and straighten my clothes before heading out to greet her. "Michaela," I called, hoping my voice didn't betray my nervousness. "What a surprise!" She turned, those blue eyes lighting up as they landed on me. "Lindsay, I hope you don't mind me dropping by unannounced. I was in the area and couldn't resist the chance to see where the magic happens." "Not at all," I said, trying to ignore the butterflies in my stomach. "I'd be happy to give you a tour." As we walked through the vineyard, I found myself hyper-aware of Michaela's presence. The way she'd brush against me as we navigated the rows of vines, the light touch of her hand on my arm as I explained our cultivation process. Her perfume, a heady mix of jasmine and something uniquely her, was more intoxicating than any wine I'd ever tasted. We made our way to the cellars, the cool darkness a welcome respite from the afternoon heat. As we moved between the barrels, Michaela's hand found the small of my back, guiding me through the narrow passages. The simple touch sent sparks racing up my spine. "It's incredible down here," Michaela murmured, her breath warm against my ear. "So much history, so much potential." I turned to face her, suddenly aware of how close we were standing. In the dim light, her eyes seemed to smolder, drawing me in. "Would you like to taste some of that potential?" I asked, my voice huskier than I intended. Michaela's lips curved into a smile that made my knees weak. "I thought you'd never ask." We retreated to my private tasting room, a cozy space with a view overlooking the vineyard. As I poured the first wine, a crisp Chardonnay, our fingers brushed on the stem of the glass. Neither of us pulled away. "Tell me about this one," Michaela said softly, her eyes never leaving mine. I leaned in close, my lips almost grazing her ear as I described the notes of apple and vanilla, the subtle oak finish. I could feel her shiver as my breath tickled her skin. We worked our way through several vintages, the tension building with each pour. By the time we reached my prized Cabernet, the same one she'd tasted at the festival, the air was thick with unspoken desire. As Michaela took a sip, a drop of the deep red wine clung to her lower lip. Without thinking, I reached out, gently wiping it away with my thumb. Her breath caught, and for a moment, I thought she might kiss me. The spell was broken by a sudden crack of thunder. We both jumped, laughing nervously as rain began to pelt the windows. "Looks like you might be stuck here for a while," I said, trying to hide my excitement at the prospect. Michaela's eyes twinkled mischievously. "What a shame. Whatever shall we do to pass the time?" The storm raged outside as we retreated to the main house, a bottle of wine in hand. We settled in front of the fireplace, the flickering flames casting a warm glow over Michaela's features. As we talked and laughed, sharing stories of our lives and our passion for wine, I found myself inching closer to her on the couch. By the time we'd finished the bottle, our thighs were pressed together, and Michaela's hand had found its way to my knee. The air crackled with possibility. "Lindsay," Michaela said softly, her fingers tracing patterns on my skin. "I have to admit, I didn't come here just for the wine." My heart raced as I met her gaze. "Oh? What did you come for then?" She leaned in, close enough that I could feel her breath on my lips. "I think you know." Just as I closed my eyes, anticipating the kiss I'd been dreaming of for weeks, another clap of thunder shook the house. We both startled, then burst into laughter. "Maybe that's a sign we should take things slow," Michaela said, though she made no move to pull away. I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. "You're probably right. We have all the time in the world after all." As the storm continued to rage outside, we talked late into the night, sharing secrets and dreams. When we finally said goodnight, retiring to separate guest rooms, the air was thick with promise and the sweet ache of anticipation. Lying in bed, listening to the rain, I couldn't help but smile. Michaela might not have kissed me tonight, but something told me this was just the beginning of a vintage that would only get better with age. In the weeks that followed, Michaela became a fixture at Sunset Ridge. She'd show up unannounced, a bottle of wine from some far-flung vineyard in hand, eager to compare notes. I found myself living for those visits, for the way her eyes would light up as we discussed flavor profiles, for the casual touches that sent electricity coursing through my body. We were in the lab one afternoon, hunched over beakers and pipettes, working on a new blend. Michaela's brow was furrowed in concentration, a stray lock of blonde hair falling across her face. Without thinking, I reached out to tuck it behind her ear. She looked up, startled, and for a moment I thought I'd overstepped. But then she smiled, leaning into my touch. "Thanks," she murmured, her voice low and husky. "I was just thinking how lucky I am to be here, working on this with you." I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the way my heart raced. "I'm the lucky one," I said softly. "Your palate is incredible. This blend wouldn't be half as good without you." Michaela's eyes darkened, and she leaned in closer. I could smell the faint traces of the wine we'd been sampling, mingled with her intoxicating perfume. For a moment, I thought she might kiss me. But then she pulled back, clearing her throat. "We should, get back to work," she said, a flush creeping up her neck. I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. "Right, work." As we continued to fine-tune the blend, I couldn't help but wonder if we were creating something more than just wine. The local wine competition snuck up on us faster than I'd anticipated. Suddenly it was the night before, and I was a bundle of nerves. Michaela had insisted on being my +1, claiming she wanted to see the fruits of our labor unveiled. The event was held in a grand ballroom, all crystal chandeliers and polished marble. I felt out of place in my simple black dress, but Michaela. She was a vision in deep burgundy, the color bringing out the warmth in her skin. "You look stunning," I whispered as we entered, my hand on the small of her back. She turned, her eyes roaming appreciatively over my figure. "So do you," she said, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "I can't wait to celebrate with you later." The implications of her words sent a shiver down my spine. As the night wore on, our wine garnered more and more attention. Judges and fellow vintners alike praised its complexity, its perfect balance. I was on cloud nine, floating from one conversation to the next, Michaela never far from my side. But then I saw her, head thrown back in laughter, talking animatedly with a tall, striking woman I didn't recognize. The woman's hand was on Michaela's arm, and they seemed lost in their own little world. Jealousy, hot and unexpected, surged through me. I watched as they chatted, the woman leaning in close to whisper something in Michaela's ear. Before I knew what I was doing, I was striding across the room. "Michaela," I said, my voice tight. "Can I borrow you for a moment?" She turned, surprise flickering across her face at my tone. "Of course, excuse me," she said to the woman, who nodded and sauntered off. I led Michaela to a quiet corner, my emotions warring inside me. "Who was that?" I asked, trying and failing to keep the jealousy out of my voice. Michaela's eyebrows shot up. "An old colleague. Lindsay, what's wrong?" "Nothing," I said quickly. I thought we were here together." Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed quickly by something that looked suspiciously like satisfaction. "We are," she said softly, stepping closer. "I'm not interested in anyone else, Lindsay, only you." Before I could respond, they announced the winners. Our wine had taken first place. The rest of the night passed in a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts. But through it all, Michaela never left my side, her hand a constant, reassuring presence on my back or arm. As the crowd thinned, Michaela leaned in close. "Let's get out of here," she whispered, her breath hot against my ear. "I think it's time for a private celebration." My heart pounded as we slipped out into the warm night air. The drive back to the vineyard was charged with anticipation, Michaela's hand resting on my thigh, her thumb tracing maddening circles on my skin. As soon as we were out of the car, Michaela pulled me close. "I've been wanting to do this all night," she murmured, before capturing my lips in a searing kiss. I melted into her, all the tension and longing of the past weeks pouring out. Her lips were soft, tasting of champagne and promise. I tangled my hands in her hair, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Michaela rested her forehead against mine. "Wow," she whispered. "Wow indeed," I agreed, my voice shaky. She smiled, a mix of tenderness and desire in her eyes. "Come on," she said, taking my hand. "Let's go for a walk in the vineyard. I want to kiss you under the stars." As we wandered through the rows of vines, stealing kisses and whispering sweet nothings, I felt like I was floating. The night air was heavy with the scent of ripening grapes and possibility. We ended up on a small hill overlooking the vineyard, the lights of the winery twinkling in the distance. Michaela pulled me close, her arms wrapping around my waist. "I think I'm falling for you, Lindsay," she said softly, her eyes shining in the moonlight. My heart soared. "I think I'm falling for you, too," I admitted. As we kissed again, slow and deep and full of promise, I knew that whatever came next, it would be the adventure of a lifetime. Like the perfect wine, our relationship was just beginning to mature, full of complexity and depth, with notes of passion, trust, and the sweet anticipation of what was yet to come. The weeks following our first kiss were a whirlwind of stolen moments and passionate encounters. Michaela and I fell into a rhythm, her visits to the vineyard becoming more frequent and lasting longer each time. But, as our relationship blossomed, so did the nagging voice of insecurity in the back of my mind. One lazy Sunday morning, as we lay tangled in my sheets, Michaela tracing patterns on my bare skin, the doubts I'd been harboring finally bubbled to the surface. "Michaela," I began hesitantly, "do you ever think about the age difference between us?" She propped herself up on an elbow, her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I sighed, struggling to find the right words. "You're so accomplished, so confident. Sometimes I feel like I'm playing catch-up, like maybe I'm not enough for you." Michaela's expression softened. She leaned in, pressing a gentle kiss to my forehead. Lindsay, you're everything I want. Age is just a number. Her words were meant to reassure, but they only intensified the knot in my stomach. How could she not see the gulf between us? Her career was at its peak, while I was still fighting to make a name for myself in the wine world. The doubts continued to gnaw at me in the following days. I threw myself into work, spending long hours in the lab tweaking our latest blend, desperate to prove my worth. Michaela noticed the change. You're working too hard, she said one evening, massaging my tense shoulders as I hunched over my notes. Come to bed, love. I shrugged her off, perhaps more brusquely than I intended. I need to finish this, you go ahead. She hesitated, hurt flashing in her eyes before she nodded and left me to my work. The distance between us, once non-existent, now felt like a chasm. The annual Vintners Gala arrived, a glittering affair that brought together the who's who of the wine world. Michaela insisted we attend together, her eyes sparkling with excitement as we got ready. You look stunning, she murmured, zipping up my dress, her fingers lingering on my skin. I turned to face her, my breath catching at the sight of her in a sleek form-fitting gown. So do you, I said softly, leaning in for a kiss. For a moment, as our lips met, I forgot all my insecurities. But they came rushing back as soon as we entered the gala. Michaela was in her element, effortlessly charming everyone she encountered. I watched as she discussed vintage years with renowned sommeliers, her knowledge vast and impressive. Meanwhile, I felt like an imposter, clutching my glass of wine like a lifeline. Lindsay! A booming voice startled me out of my thoughts. I turned to see Marcus, a fellow winemaker, approaching with a grin. I hear your latest blend is causing quite a stir. Care to share your secrets? Before I could respond, Michaela appeared at my side, her arms slipping around my waist. I'm afraid that's proprietary information, she said with a wink, but I can assure you it's exceptional. Lindsay's talent is unparalleled. Marcus raised an eyebrow, his gaze flicking between us. I see, he said, a note of something I couldn't quite identify in his voice. Well, I'll leave you ladies to it. Enjoy the evening. As he walked away, I felt a flash of irritation. I could have handled that, you know, I said, stepping out of Michaela's embrace. She looked taken aback. I was just trying to help. I don't need your help, I snapped, the words coming out harsher than I intended. I'm not some novice who needs you to speak for her. Hurt bloomed in Michaela's eyes. That's not what I was doing, Lindsay. I was supporting you. Well, maybe I don't want your support. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and cutting. Michaela recoiled as if I'd slapped her. I see, she said, her voice cold. In that case, I'll leave you to it. She turned on her heel and disappeared into the crowd. I wanted to call after her, to take back the words, but pride kept me rooted to the spot. Instead, I made my way to the bar, determined to drown my conflicted emotions in another glass of wine. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I mingled half-heartedly, all too aware of Michaela's absence by my side. When I finally spotted her across the room, deep in conversation with a group of industry veterans, the sight sent a pang through my chest. As the gala wound down, I found myself alone on the terrace, the cool night air a welcome respite from the stuffiness inside. I didn't hear Michaela approach until she was beside me, her presence both a comfort and a source of anxiety. Are you ready to talk about what happened in there? She asked quietly. I turned to face her, opening my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, a wave of dizziness washed over me. I stumbled, reaching out to steady myself on the railing. Lindsay? Michaela's voice sounded far away. Are you all right? The world tilted sideways, and suddenly I was falling. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was Michaela's face, etched with fear and concern. I woke to the sterile white of a hospital room, the steady beep of monitors filling the air. Michaela was there, her hand clasping mine, her face pale with worry. What happened? I croaked, my throat dry. You collapsed, she said, her voice trembling. The doctors, they found something, Lindsay. You're sick. As she explained the diagnosis, a rare condition that would require extensive treatment, I felt my world crumbling around me. All the petty insecurities and arguments from earlier seemed insignificant in the face of this new, terrifying reality. I'm scared, I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. Michaela leaned in, pressing her forehead to mine. I know, love, but we'll face this together. I'm not going anywhere. As I drifted off, the medication pulling me under, I clung to Michaela's hand like a lifeline. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever battles we'd have to fight, both with my illness and within our relationship, I knew one thing for certain. I didn't want to face them without her by my side. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital room cast a sickly glow over everything, making even Michaela's golden hair look dull. I'd been here for weeks, my body a battleground of treatments and tests. Through it all, Michaela had been my constant, her unwavering presence a balm to my fears. I brought you something, she said softly, pulling a small bottle from her bag. It's from the batch we were working on before. Well, before all this. I managed a weak smile as she poured a tiny amount into a plastic cup. The rich aroma filled the sterile room, transporting me back to sun-drenched vineyards and late nights in the cellar. It's perfect, I whispered after a small sip, tears pricking my eyes. You finished it. Michaela's hand found mine, squeezing gently. We finished it, and we'll make many more together once you're out of here. Her optimism was infectious, but doubt still gnawed at me. What if I can't? What if I'm never well enough to? Stop, she interrupted, her voice firm but kind. You're going to beat this, Lindsay, and I'll be right here, every step of the way. As I looked into her eyes, so full of love and determination, I felt a surge of strength. Maybe, just maybe, we could get through this. The days blurred together, a monotonous cycle of treatments and rest. Michaela was there for every high and low, holding my hair back when I was sick, celebrating every small victory. But as my body weakened, so did my resolve. One particularly rough day, after a round of treatment left me feeling hollowed out, I finally voiced the fear that had been eating away at me. You don't have to stay, you know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. This isn't what you signed up for. Michaela's head snapped up from the book she'd been reading aloud. What are you talking about? I couldn't meet her eyes. This. Me? I'm not the woman you fell for anymore. I'm sick and weak and the love of my life, Michaela interrupted, her voice fierce. She moved to sit on the edge of my bed, taking my face in her hands. Lindsay, look at me. Reluctantly, I met her gaze. The intensity I saw there took my breath away. I'm not here out of obligation or pity, she said. I'm here because there's nowhere else I'd rather be. Because I love you, all of you. The brilliant winemaker, the stubborn patient, the woman who's fighting with everything she has. I love you, Lindsay. And nothing, not age, not distance, and certainly not this illness, is going to change that. Tears streamed down my face as Michaela pulled me into a gentle embrace. For the first time since my diagnosis, I let myself truly break down, sobbing into her shoulder as she held me. I'm scared, I admitted, between hiccuping breaths. I'm scared of dying, of leaving you, of never getting to live out all the dreams we talked about. Michaela stroked my hair, her own tears falling silently. I know, love, I'm scared too. But we're going to face this fear together, okay? One day at a time. As my sobs subsided, I felt a weight lift from my chest. The fear wasn't gone, but it no longer felt all-consuming. With Michaela by my side, I found the strength to hope again. The next few weeks saw a turning point in my recovery. Whether it was the new treatment protocol, sheer determination, or the power of love, as Michaela liked to claim, I began to improve. Slowly but surely, color returned to my cheeks, and my strength began to return. On a crisp autumn morning, the doctor delivered the news we'd been praying for. I was in remission. Michaela's joyous laugh filled the room as she pulled me into a careful hug, peppering my face with kisses. I told you, she said, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. I told you you'd beat this. As we left the hospital, hand in hand, the world seemed brighter somehow. The trees lining the street were a riot of reds and golds, and the air held the promise of new beginnings. So, Michaela said as we drove back to the vineyard, what do you want to do first? Sky's the limit, love. I thought for a moment, then smiled. I want to go for a walk through the vines, feel the sun on my face, the earth under my feet, and then I want you to kiss me under our favorite oak tree. Michaela's answering smile was radiant. Your wish is my command. The vineyard welcomed us home, the familiar scent of earth and grapes enveloping us as we walked hand in hand through the rows of vines. My steps were slower than before, but Michaela matched her pace to mine without comment. When we reached the old oak tree, its leaves a burnished gold in the late afternoon light, Michaela turned to face me. Her hands came up to cup my face, thumbs gently stroking my cheekbones. "You are the strongest, most incredible woman I've ever known," she said softly. "And I fall more in love with you every day." As her lips met mine in a tender kiss, I felt truly alive for the first time in months. The warmth of the sun on my skin, the solid presence of the tree at my back, and the soft press of Michaela's body against mine, it was a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. When we finally parted, both a little breathless, Michaela rested her forehead against mine. "Move in with me," she said suddenly. I pulled back slightly, surprised. "What?" "Move in with me," she repeated, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Or I'll move in here. I don't care where as long as we're together. These past few months, they've shown me that life's too short to waste a single moment. I want to wake up next to you every morning, Lindsay. I want to build a life with you, to make wine with you, to love you every day for the rest of our lives." Tears welled in my eyes, but this time they were tears of happiness. "Yes," I whispered, pulling her close. "Yes to all of it." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the vineyard, Michaela and I stood entwined beneath the oak tree, planning our future. There would be challenges ahead, I knew. Recovery was a long road, and we still had our differences to navigate. But as Michaela's arms tightened around me, I felt nothing but hope. Like the finest wine, our love had been tested, aged through adversity, and emerged stronger and richer than ever. And I couldn't wait to savor every moment of it. A year had passed since my recovery, and life at Sunset Ridge Vineyard had taken on a new rhythm. Michaela and I had settled into a comfortable routine, our days filled with the ebb and flow of winemaking and love. The vineyard flourished under our combined expertise, and so did our relationship. One crisp autumn morning, as golden sunlight filtered through the changing leaves, Michaela burst into our bedroom, her blue eyes sparkling with excitement. "Wake up, sleepyhead," she said, placing a gentle kiss on my forehead. "I've got a surprise for you." I groaned playfully, pulling her down onto the bed. "Can't the surprise wait? I was having the most delicious dream about you." Michaela laughed, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on my skin. "Trust me, this is better than any dream." Intrigued, I allowed her to lead me out of bed and into the vineyard. The air was crisp, heavy with the scent of ripening grapes. We walked hand in hand through the rows of vines, until we reached a section I didn't recognize. "What's this?" I asked, running my fingers over the unfamiliar leaves. Michaela's smile was radiant. "This, my love, is our new project. A unique blend, cultivated from cuttings of both our favorite varietals. I've been working on it in secret for months." I stared at her in amazement. "You did this for me?" She nodded, pulling me close. "For us. I thought we could create something truly special together, a wine that represents our journey." Tears pricked my eyes as I kissed her, pouring all my love and gratitude into the embrace. As we parted, both a little breathless, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. Over the next few weeks, Michaela and I threw ourselves into our new project. We spent long days in the vineyard, carefully tending to our unique grapes, and even longer nights in the cellar, experimenting with different blending techniques. One evening, as we hunched over beakers and test tubes, the familiar spark of competition ignited between us. "I'm telling you," Michaela insisted, her eyes gleaming. "A touch more Merlot will give it the depth it needs." I shook my head, grinning. "And I'm telling you, it's perfect as is. Any more Merlot and we'll lose the delicate notes of the Pinot." We bickered playfully, each trying to sway the other to our point of view. Finally, Michaela held up her hands in surrender. "All right, wine goddess," she said, her voice teasing. "We'll do it your way. But I reserve the right to say I told you so if it doesn't work out." I laughed, pulling her in for a kiss. "Deal. And if I'm right, you owe me a massage." As our lips met, I marveled at how easily we'd fallen into this partnership, both in wine and in life. The insecurities that had once plagued me seemed a distant memory. Weeks turned into months, and before we knew it, it was time for the launch of our special edition wine. We'd decided to unveil it at an intimate gathering of industry insiders and close friends. As I stood before the mirror, smoothing down my dress, I caught sight of Michaela watching me from the doorway. Her gaze was filled with such love and admiration that it took my breath away. "See something you like?" I teased, turning to face her. She crossed the room in 3 quick strides, pulling me into her arms. "I see everything I like," she murmured, her lips brushing against my ear. "And everything I love." The party was in full swing, the air buzzing with anticipation. As I mingled with our guests, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. This wasn't just about the wine, it was a celebration of how far we'd come, both as winemakers and as partners. Finally, it was time for the big reveal. Michaela clinked her glass, calling for attention. As all eyes turned to us, she reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and strong. "Lindsay and I are thrilled to present our latest creation. This wine is more than just a blend of grapes. It's a testament to love, to perseverance, and to the beautiful things that can happen when 2 people come together." As we poured the first glasses, I held my breath. This was the moment of truth. I watched as our guests took their first sips, their expressions changing from curiosity to surprise to delight. The room erupted in applause and congratulations. Our wine was a hit. As I turned to Michaela, my heart swelling with joy and pride, I found her already looking at me, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "We did it," I whispered, squeezing her hand. She nodded, pulling me close. "We did. And this is just the beginning." As the party wound down, Michaela led me out onto the terrace. The night was clear, stars twinkling overhead like diamonds scattered on velvet. In the distance, our vineyard stretched out before us, a promise of future harvests and shared dreams. "I have something for you," Michaela said softly, reaching into her pocket. She pulled out a small velvet box, and my heart skipped a beat. "Michaela," I breathed, hardly daring to hope. She took my hand, her touch sending shivers down my spine. "Lindsay, this past year has been the most challenging and the most rewarding of my life. You've shown me what true strength looks like, what love can overcome. I want to spend the rest of my days by your side, creating beautiful things together, facing whatever life throws our way." She opened the box, revealing a stunning ring. The center stone was deep red, reminiscent of the wine we'd just created together. "Will you marry me?" Michaela asked, her voice filled with love and hope. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. Michaela slipped the ring onto my finger, then pulled me into a passionate kiss. As we broke apart, both laughing and crying, I knew that this was just the beginning of our greatest adventure yet. We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, overlooking the vineyard that had brought us together. Like the finest wine, our love had matured, growing richer and more complex with time. And as I looked towards our future, I knew that the best vintages were yet to come.